The Varnathi clerk's mandibles clicked lazily as he dragged the destruction report into the final confirmation window. The air around him shimmered with bureaucratic calm, soft hums from filtration vents, the soothing glow of orbital light panels, the scent of sterile algae paste drifting from his half-finished lunch. Colony E59K, he muttered, voice metallic through his thorax. Human designated. Unauthorized resistance. Minor mineral violation. Clearance for vaporization pre-approved. He paused, blinking one lens, and let out a dry chuckle. Carbon apes never learn. With a flick of his spindly limb, the final stamp appeared, obliterated. Nothing trembled. No alarms shrieked. No war drums. The galaxy turned like it always had, slow and indifferent. Just beyond the wall of glass, the stars shimmered like static. He turned back to his console and began logging destruction report hashtag 7220 Delta. Minimal loss. No recorded retaliation. Standard behavior for human sector. Archive under low-risk civilian cleansing. Across the city-sized archive chamber, other clerks mirrored his rhythm. Dozens of species, 100 tentacles, or feathers, or gelatinous cores, working with the same shared assumption, that the galaxy was predictable, that humanity, scattered and fractured as it was, posed no more threat than a rusted shuttle hull. The Varnathi leaned back in his pod, folding his limbs. Coffee, he ordered aloud, and a feeder arm extended from the ceiling. But the drink never came. The filtration system paused mid-cycle. One of the wall-sized archive screens flickered. A single red dot appeared beside the file name, then blinked out. He frowned. Rebooted the display. Nothing. That was the first error. The Galactic Senate convened 3 days later, though time was irrelevant here, suspended in diplomatic null space aboard the custodian spire. Delegates drifted to their seats, floating gracefully under soft gravitational compression. Their robes were ceremonial, marked with genetic lineage and bureaucratic triumphs. The human seat, seat 48A, remained unoccupied as always. Next matter, intoned a gelatinous speaker from the Council of Ethereal Thought. Civilian adjustment incident in human registered system. Designation E59K. Appears the colony was erased for mineral claim interference. A squat, oily-bodied delegate from the merchant hives of Trask waved a translator wand. Any retaliation recorded? None. Standard silence. Expected behavioral model. Any apology protocols needed? Inquired a lean-limbed noble from the Archon Dominion. They are technically sentient, I suppose. The speaker's jellied form quivered faintly. Regret protocols unnecessary. No cultural value assets were lost. No ambassadors. No children designated for interspecies schooling. Colony not marked for future integration. Incident deemed inconsequential. There was a collective pause, the kind bred not from doubt, but from bureaucracy. If silence lingered too long, someone would call for a vote, and that would mean paperwork. Motion to finalize archive, said a Nari diplomat, her 6 fingers gliding through air. Close the record. Seconded. Passed. No objections. Silence returned. But in the cold corner of the spire, beneath the observation deck, where Earth's blue marble icon once floated, someone was watching. The data courier was small, spidery, eyes clouded with encryption layers, a living archive transponder from the machine pilgrims of Vin. It had no name, only function, and it had just delivered the last official record of E59K to Earth's diplomat vault. A vault nobody had visited in 6 years. But someone was still logged in. The janitor sat in silence, watching the blinking cursor on the terminal screen. He wore a navy blue EarthGov jumpsuit, the name patch long scuffed away, the synthetic fabric patched with solder tape. No rank, no clearance, just a broom propped against the wall. He had swept this hallway for 13 years. He recognized the destruction notice instantly. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just tapped the enter key once, then typed a 16-digit string that hadn't been used since Earth surrendered its last off-world claim. Protocol L exhumed. The screen shivered. Something unlocked, far below the city crust. The janitor stood, carefully folded his gloves, and walked away, leaving behind the terminal humming with forgotten fury. In the orbital command center above Earth, Admiral Seva Tran rubbed her temples as a dozen feeds blinked across her interface. She hadn't slept. No one in Earth Defense Command had, not since the colony's black box broadcasted its last signal. There were no screams on the recording, no alarms, just one clear message, sent on an old civilian frequency. They're here. Tell Elias I kept them inside. I kept the door closed. Don't let him forget me. She paused the file again, rewound, replayed. She hadn't told Vance. Not yet. They had argued years ago. Over strategy, over silence, over whether Earth should retaliate when the trade routes were severed. He had walked away from the uniform then, walked into exile with a head full of unapproved tactics and a heart cracked in two. She was told not to contact him again. But tonight, she opened a secure channel. He answered on the second ring, his face unchanged, sharp, scarless, but his eyes were glass. Not weak, just no longer pretending. You saw it, he said. She nodded. It was her, he said. She didn't ask how he knew. The file was time-stamped. His daughter's signature was on the frequency. I kept the door closed. He didn't cry, didn't tremble, just turned, and she heard the hiss of cold metal locks disengaging behind him. I want clearance, he said. For 11. Seva stiffened. You're not on the books anymore. And 11 was buried. They buried the idea. Not the people. It's not just war, Elias. It's extinction. No, he said softly. Extinction already happened. This is what comes after. The line went dead. She didn't stop the override. In the Galactic Network's central hub, a junior archivist for the interstellar ethics feed scrolled through the destruction report with mild disinterest. He was new, human adjacent. Mostly synth, but with an organic core, a politically safe blend of empathy and automation. He tagged the report as reviewed and scheduled it for public translation. As his claw reached to upload, the console glitched. All screens dimmed. A whisper crawled across the room. The lights flickered. A message blinked into existence, not from Earth's formal channels, not from any known origin. You touched our children. The console melted in his hands. Across 17 sectors, identical messages bloomed like tumors in the feeds. Insectoid warlords, silicon archivists, matriarchal queens, all received the same phrase. None understood, but the Vernathi clerk, back in his archive pod, did. His screen stayed black. Not frozen. Empty. He reached for the console again, typed in command after command. No response. The last thing he saw before the system shut down was the destruction report for E59K. The red dot had returned, only now it pulsed, and beneath it a single line had been added. Correction in progress. He sat back, suddenly cold, suddenly very aware of how alone he was in a chamber designed for the victors of history. His breath fogged the glass. He turned to look out into space, and paused. There, just above the third moon's arc, was something drifting. Not a ship, not a drone, just a shape. A black cube, polished like obsidian. No lights, no engines, no registration signal. Only a symbol etched into one face, a child's open handprint, and something like a lullaby, barely audible, trickling into his ears. He reached up to adjust the comms, but it wasn't playing through the console. It was coming from inside his head. Far away on Earth, the janitor folded his old uniform, tucked it under his arm, and stepped into the lift marked restricted. Below him, the planet exhaled. Above the galaxy, a whisper began to spread. Humanity was not silent. Humanity was listening. And it had remembered. The old naval facility was buried beneath 600 meters of reinforced basalt and bureaucratic forgetting. On most maps, it didn't exist. On the ones that remembered, it was marked with a single word: decommissioned. Elias Vance stood in front of the access terminal, his breath curling in the stale underground air. Dust had settled thick over the console. The lighting strips above him flickered like the dying thoughts of a once glorious war machine. A badge scanner whirred to life, protesting the years, but it still knew him. Vance Elias. Clearance revoked. The voice was synthetic, tired. He placed his hand against the plate. There was a pause. Then a click, slow and heavy. The steel doors opened inward with the solemn grace of a tomb. Vance stepped through. He did not look back. The hallway beyond was lined with ghost light, pale green strips casting a sickly glow over rusted floor grates. He walked with purpose, boots echoing, coat heavy with rain that had begun falling above ground. In his left hand he carried a simple box, wooden, old, and burned slightly at one corner. It was a child's keepsake chest. Inside was a faded drawing, a locket, and a shard of glass from a colony dome. He carried it like it weighed more than a star. They had erased her with a report, called her life incidental. But she had a name, Miri, and her son Kale had only just begun to walk on real soil when the Empire deemed their settlement inefficient. Vance had begged her to leave that colony. Begged. But she said the boy deserved to grow somewhere still hopeful. She believed in peace, in the treaties, in the order. She had kept the door closed. He passed under an arch bearing a forgotten phrase carved in metal, the hollow choir. Below it, silence waited, the kind of silence that knew how to hum. The lights flickered once, then held steady. Ahead, the command table came alive, powered by protocols no one had touched in a decade. A single chair rotated to face him. On it sat a woman whose smile hadn't aged. "I thought I'd buried this place," she said. "Then why are you here, Tran?" Admiral Seva, Tran exhaled. "Because I knew you'd come back when they crossed the line." "They didn't cross the line," he replied. "They turned it into a grave." He placed the wooden box on the table. The locket slid out slightly, catching the green light. Tran looked at it, then away. "I authorized Black Site shut down after your resignation," she said softly. "But I couldn't destroy this room. There was too much history, too much precision." Vance nodded. The choirs still scattered. Tran tapped a few commands into her wrist interface. A hologram flared to life, 12 red markers blinking across the Earth system, buried deep in forgotten files. "They're ghosts now," she said. "Some in deep space. One went blind after the Andar offensive. One became a priest." "They'll answer," Vance said. "They always did." He stared at the locket, silent. Then finally he asked, "You decoded the final signal?" Tran nodded. "We verified the voice. It was Miri." His eyes closed, just for a breath. When they opened again, they were stone. "I want Lazarus Protocol reinstated." She hesitated. "You understand what that means? Once we activate the choir, there's no unringing the bell. No negotiations. No ceasefires. This isn't war, Seva," he said. "This is reclamation." She stood beside him. "Then you'll need sanction." He turned to the wall, behind the table, where a rusted panel hid a biometric trigger. He placed his palm against it. A low vibration crawled through the room, and then, emerging from the floor, rose a black monolith, smooth as shadow and marked only with an engraved phrase. For silence. For fire. For blood. The wall displays lit up one by one, tracking reactivation. Old call signs pulsed to life. Hymn 5. Preacher 9. Hollow Eye. Widow 2. Tran whispered, "My God. It still runs." "It always ran," Vance replied. "It was just waiting." They watched as encrypted data surged into the vacuum, dead channels springing open across the system, carrying a signal older than any treaty. He could feel it like a heartbeat underfoot. 6 systems away, in a monastery built from asteroid ice, a monk set down his scripture. He wore no robes, only armor etched with verses no one had translated in 20 years. His eyes were hollow, his mouth stitched with a thin line of scar. The scripture whispered. He nodded. He rose and stepped into the void. In the deeps of Earth's trenches, a woman with burned scars across her face and a mechanic's coat smeared with grease looked up from her forge. A pulse ran through her fingers, old code. She smiled without joy. Her tools dropped. She reached for the case beneath the floorboards. In an abandoned shipyard, where junk floated like bones, a blind man laughed. Not a full laugh, just a single, sharp breath. Then he called out to no one, "Ready the wings." Back in the hollow choir chamber, the black monolith finished its initialization. The air around it turned cold. Not mechanically, emotionally. Tran studied Vance, her voice tight. "You're not the same man I served with." "I'm not." "You're colder." "No," he said. "I'm focused." The lights dimmed as final protocols sealed. Then came a sound they had not heard in 10 years. The choir's chorus. One rising note, like metal dragged over stone, resolving into clarity. Tran stepped back. "They'll call this genocide." Vance picked up the locket and put it in his coat pocket. "They already committed that." Tran hesitated, then offered him a data slate. "You'll need a target." He didn't take it. "I already have one," he said. Above them, satellites fell silent. Across the stars, alien signals began to flicker, small anomalies at first. Delayed orders. Misrouted supplies. A vanished escort fleet. No explosions. Just decay. The hollow choir had not returned to scream. They had come to unmake. And their song had already begun. Governor Kelvath of the Zenthari Triad was not accustomed to silence. Her command chamber, perched high above the planetary crust of Senka Prime, usually throbbed with the sound of requests, alerts, energy transfers, and the filtered whine of orbital stabilization engines. Today it was quiet. Not dead, just wrong. She adjusted her cranial array, for golden tendrils twitching as her neural interface looped again through the comm suite. Still no signal. No update from Outpost Heshtar, no routine patrol pings from Mining Ring 09, and, most unsettling of all, no pingbacks from the relay drones meant to monitor Earth's debris sector. 3 entire systems dark. No alarms. No distress. Just gone. She turned to her aide, a translucent-limbed vexery bred specifically for logic extrapolation. "Query the timeline. When did they go dark?" The vexery blinked. 17 cycles ago for Heshtar. 11 for Ring 09. 8 for the drones. "And what have we done?" "Log the errors. Filed them for intersector review." Kelvath stared. "You filed them?" The vexery's tone didn't change. Protocol dictates no escalation without evidence of kinetic hostility. Kelvath's fingers flexed against the data terminal. Her species didn't feel fear in the mammalian sense. But something deep in her evolved mind began to hum. Instinct. The kind honed over centuries of political triumph and militarized diplomacy. She sent a priority alert to the core fleet and turned on every satellite in orbit, pulling real-time feeds. The screens flickered to life, and every single one showed the same thing: static. No wreckage. No drift. No debris fields or distress signals. Just static. She leaned in, narrowing her gaze. Amid the noise, one pattern repeated. A rhythm. Every 17 seconds, the signal pulsed faintly, just once. She froze. It was Morse. Old Earth code. A single letter, blinking over and over. H. On a refinery moon orbiting Drogar 3, a technician lowered himself into a comms hatch and didn't come out. His supervisor followed, only to find him curled in the dark, staring at the internal display screen. "What is that?" the supervisor asked, voice tight. The tech didn't answer, just pointed. The display showed footage from the orbital maintenance deck. Only now the deck had no personnel. It had no lights. And someone had etched a shape into the observation glass from the outside. A child's open hand. Beside it, a drawing. A human one. Crude, with colors bleeding from atmospheric friction. A family. Stick figures, 2 adults, 1 child, a dome overhead. The name Kale written beside it. The technician whispered, "That wasn't there yesterday." By nightfall, every orbital feed around Drogar 3 went dark. Admiral Soliner of the Corps Strategic Command reviewed the reports with mounting irritation. Her race, mechanically perfected and genetically refined, didn't suffer fools or delays. But this pattern, this vanishing, had no precedent. "This is not terrorism," she stated flatly. "There are no claims. No ransom. This is entropy." Her advisors nodded, uncomfortable. "Send a scout fleet. 2 capital ships. 12 interceptors. Chart the area around the first lost site." Within an hour, the fleet was gone. Within 3, so were they. The final transmission, recovered later from a deep-range surveillance node, consisted of static, then a voice. Human. Male. Calm. We remember who you erased. No name. No ID. No location. Just a voice. Soliner gritted her teeth. Send full fleet analysis to the Senate. I want options. Show of force. Domination protocol. But Admiral, her second-in-command said, voice nearly trembling. The losses weren't from combat. Then we'll give them combat anyway. She didn't notice the flicker in her systems, the momentary delay in her heart signal feedback, or that her biometric lock temporarily unlocked itself, and then relocked without her input. Back in the Hollow Choir's command vault, Elias Vance stood before the projection array, watching a silent map bloom with red. Each mark was an absence. They were making progress. Tran leaned beside him, arms folded. They don't understand yet. They will. She nodded. Choirs operating cleaner than ever. No signatures. Just precision. They're not meant to notice us, Vance said. They're meant to feel the space where something used to be. He opened a comms line, not to anyone in the choir, but to a dormant beacon nestled in Earth's orbital boneyard. The moment he did, his face changed. The signal pulsed back. From someone who shouldn't be responding. A woman's voice, fractured through data rot, came online. Miri. Her voice. Kale is safe. They never found the lower chambers. He cried when the glass cracked. Tell Dad. I kept the door shut. Vance stood perfectly still. Tran swallowed. It was a backup relay. Ghost file. From just before impact. He didn't answer. He let the silence stretch like skin over old wounds. She finally asked, Do you want to recover it? The site. Vance shook his head. No. We don't go back for graves. He pressed a button. One more red mark lit the map. We give them their own. In the Senate chambers, voices cracked the still air. They've taken 15 systems, a more contactician spat. Her voice warbling through her gill plate. Without a single confirmed engagement. They haven't taken them, the Archon Noble corrected. They've unmade them. A vote was called to classify humanity as a Tier Red entropic threat. No formal war. No declaration. Just silent erasure from galactic relevance. The motion failed by one vote. The Varnathi diplomat abstained. When questioned, he only said, They're not coming for power. They're coming for closure. In a transport hub on the edge of Zenthari territory, a luxury liner docked and prepared to take off. The pilot reported a small maintenance delay, unknown blockage in the lower hold. Security sent a drone. The drone never returned. When they finally breached the hold, they found it empty. Except for a doll. Human-made. Wearing a uniform. On its chest, a pin marked with the choir's insignia. The shuttle was evacuated. All personnel removed. Military sweep teams sent in. The shuttle launched itself 2 hours later, without command input. And 36 minutes after that, it entered the Zenthari sun. The star, long stable, began to stutter. A week later, it collapsed into a singularity. No warning. No flare. Just the death of light. Governor Kelvath watched the footage in total silence. No council meetings. No advisors. Just her and the vid feed, repeating the last 3 seconds of the sun's implosion. Back and forth. Again and again. She recognized the timing. The blinking interval in the calm static. It wasn't H. It had changed. Now it was spelling something longer. A name. Kale. She stood, her limbs shaking. This wasn't retaliation. It was inheritance. She turned to her aide. Contact the choir, she whispered. They don't have a contact, the aide said. Then find the man who buried them. The aide hesitated. And what do I tell him? Kelvath stared out the window as the stars dimmed. Tell him we finally believe him. The war room aboard Earth's last unregistered dreadnought wasn't carved for grandeur. No banners. No crests. Just iron, cold and clean, and light panels set into the floor like distant stars. Commander Elias Vance stood at the center, coat heavy with time and memory, watching a silent projection of the galactic core spin slowly before him. 12 red rings pulsed across the starfield. Not targets. Warnings. Admiral Seva, Tran stood beside him, jaw tense. Her fingers hovered above the activation console, yet she didn't press it. "They'll retaliate," she said quietly. "No," Vance replied. "They'll hesitate. They'll ask for meetings. They'll summon councils. And in the time they waste breathing, we'll end them." Tran looked away. "You know how this makes us look." "Not like victims," he said. "That's enough." The projection shifted, zooming toward the core system, seat of the Empire, home to their archives, their fleets, their sun. It shone brightly in the center, like a god's eye. He stared at it for a long moment, then keyed in a string of coordinates, old Earth code, only ever used in theoretical gravitic warfare. The system responded. Authorization accepted. Above them, the ship trembled slightly, as if bracing itself. "Vance," Tran said, voice low. "Are we still who we were?" He turned to her, slow, eyes unreadable. "We never were." The choir's final weapon, built decades ago in silence and shame, had no official name. Internally, it was called the harp. Not because of music, because it could pluck stars like strings. The command staff had disbanded when Earth surrendered its last fleet. But the harp had stayed buried in Europa's crust, wrapped in ice, its power source sealed under miles of quantum shielding. It had no guns. It had no engine. It had gravity, enough to fold the sun into a whisper. Tran triggered the launch key. Far beneath the dreadnought, the harp detached from its stasis rack and drifted forward. No heat, no signature, just an absence of presence. "We still have 2 hours before it reaches position," Tran said. Vance nodded. "Long enough." He walked to the comms chamber. Alone, Galactic Core Fleet Admiral Soloner gripped the edge of her console, claws embedded in the polymer surface. Dozens of screens flickered around her, each broadcasting a different emergency from a different system. Shipyards offline, patrols missing, communication nodes unresponsive. But this time, they had something worse. "Ma'am, it's not sabotage," her lead analyst whispered. "It's internal. The sun, our sun, it's being pulled." Soloner blinked. Pulled. The analyst showed the readings. Gravitational anomalies spiraling in perfect alignment, forming a lattice around the star. Not from within, from somewhere outside. "There's no signature," he said. "No beam. No blast. What's doing this?" I think it's them." A beat passed. "No, it has to be them." She snarled, rage creeping into her posture. "Then send the fleet. Everything. Wipe them." "We already did," he said softly. "They're gone. Every Earth facility we had on record destroyed. Or empty." She leaned over him, eyes sharp. "Then find the ones they didn't record." Silence. Then static. Then a message. It didn't come through formal channels. It didn't have a code. It simply appeared on every screen, every deck, every mind-linked officer's vision. Vance's voice. Steady. Measured. "You erased a colony. We erased the memory of your dominance." He appeared next, hollow-eyed, aged, calm in a way that made the bones tremble. "This isn't conquest. It's a verdict." Behind him, the choir stood in silence, unhelmeted, unbowed. Scars and ink and grief carved into every face. There will be no surrender, no terms. Only this: remember your children before you make more enemies of them. The message ended. No threats, no bravado, just inevitability. Vance returned to the bridge. Tran was waiting. "They're evacuating," she said. "Good. Civilians too." "Good." Tran hesitated. "Some of them didn't vote for the purge." He looked at her, and some watched it happen. She didn't speak again. The harp reached alignment. Below them, in the depth of artificial night, the stars bowed. In the Empire's capital, the Senate convened in full emergency session. Delegates arrived half-dressed, some in morning garb, others in war silks, none prepared for what appeared on the dome above them. The sun, pulsing, dimming. One delegate screamed, pointing. Another vomited. It wasn't possible. Suns didn't dim. And then they heard it. A sound, low and sorrowful, vibrating not through the air, but through them. A resonance. A child's lullaby. Old earth language. Barely comprehensible. Soft and full of rain. The sun flickered once more. And then impossibly folded inward. Not exploded. Not shattered. Just receded. Until it was gone. A pinhole in the sky where a god had lived. Panic was immediate. Ships launched. Systems failed. Fleeing nobles collided in midair. The core fleet tried to charge weapons, but power routing lagged. The choir's final protocol was still unfolding, woven into the systems they thought were secure. It was not a virus. It was a memory, and memories don't erase cleanly. The harp had sung, and the galaxy wept. Vance stood at the viewport, watching the black where the sun had once burned. Tran joined him. "We did it," she said. "No," he murmured. "They did." The screen brightened slightly. One last signal burst. A message. Not from the choir. From the Empire. A single phrase. "We yield." Vance didn't reply. He turned away. "Mark this system as lost," he said to the bridge crew. "Name?" someone asked. He paused. Then Miri. In the stillness that followed, Earth remained silent. No celebration. No broadcast. The galaxy waited for further war. It never came. Only absence. The systems that remained began locking down, purging old logs, deleting destruction authorizations, scrubbing words like cleansing and efficiency from their histories. They told themselves it was peace. But in the void left behind, one message continued to echo through unclaimed frequencies, soft, relentless, patient. A child's voice, repeating the same words over and over. "I kept the door closed. I kept the door closed. I kept the door closed." The galaxy never forgot again, and Earth never had to ask twice.